My name is Claire Brennan, and I'm 29 years old. My sister's wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of the year. And honestly, for everyone else standing in that beautifully decorated venue, it probably was. The flowers were perfect. The lighting was warm and golden. The tables were dressed in ivory linen, and soft music drifted through the air like everything in the world was exactly where it was supposed to be. I had driven 4 hours to be there. I had bought a dress I couldn't really afford. I had shown up with a smile already practiced in the rearview mirror because I just knew that something was going to happen. It always did when my family gathered in one place. I was standing near the entrance when my parents spotted me. My mother waved me over with that particular smile she reserves for public settings, wide, bright, performed. My father had his hand resting on the shoulder of a man I didn't recognize, and beside him stood a woman in a sharp navy dress who I assumed was part of my sister's new in-laws. My mother beckoned me closer. I walked over. I smoothed my dress. I smiled like I had been practicing. "This is our other daughter," my mother said, and there was already something in her voice, a slight shift, a pulling back, like she was distancing herself from the introduction before it even finished. "Claire." She paused just long enough to be noticeable. "She works at a grocery store." That was it. That was the whole introduction. Not Claire, who put herself through night school. Not Claire, who has been managing an entire department since she was 24. Not Claire, who drove 4 hours in heels to stand here and smile at strangers. Just, "She works at a grocery store." Said the way you'd mention a traffic jam. Said the way you'd describe something mildly inconvenient that you'd rather not talk about. The woman in the navy dress gave a polite laugh. Her husband smiled the way people smile when they're not sure if something is a joke. My father didn't correct it. He just nodded, like the introduction was complete, like I had been properly filed away under the category of not worth elaborating on. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I kept the smile. I had become very good at keeping the smile. I stepped back, found myself a glass of water near the side table, and stood there quietly, watching the room fill up around me. My sister floated past in her gown, beautiful and distracted, catching my eye just long enough to give me an apologetic look that told me she had heard it too, but wasn't going to say anything. That look, I had been collecting those looks from her my whole life. Sympathy wrapped in silence. The ceremony was lovely. I will say that honestly. When my sister walked down the aisle, I felt something real and warm in my chest, something completely untouched by what had happened at the entrance. I clapped. I teared up a little. I meant both of those things. It was during the reception, when the guests were being seated and the venue staff were moving through the room with quiet efficiency, that the host stepped up to the microphone to welcome everyone. Standard stuff. Thank the families. Thank the couple. And then thank the venue. "We'd like to extend a special acknowledgement," the host said, his voice carrying clearly across the room, to the owner of Brennan and Company Event Spaces, whose generosity made tonight's pricing possible for the family. "If you'd like to show your appreciation." He looked down at his card. "Please join me in recognizing Claire Brennan." The room turned. My mother's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. The silence that followed my name over that microphone lasted maybe 3 seconds. But I have replayed those 3 seconds more times than I can count, because in those 3 seconds, I watched my mother's face do something I had never seen it do before. It collapsed. Not dramatically, not with tears or gasping, just quietly, the way a building settles when something foundational shifts beneath it. Her glass was still suspended midair. My father had turned in his seat, and the expression on his face was not pride, not even surprise. It was the particular look of a man who has just realized he has been making a very expensive mistake for a very long time. I stood up. I smoothed my dress, the same dress I had bought on a careful budget, and I walked toward the front of the room the same way I had been walking through my entire adult life, without anyone clearing the path for me. The host extended his hand. I shook it. The applause in the room was warm and genuine, coming from people who had no idea about the conversation at the entrance, people who simply knew that the woman standing at the front had done something worth recognizing. It felt extraordinary specifically because it was ordinary. Just honest acknowledgement. Just my name said plainly, without apology, without the pause my mother always inserted before any sentence that included me. What people in that room did not know, what my parents had never bothered to ask, was that I had built Brennan and Company from a single rented storage unit when I was 23 years old. I had spent the first 2 years working the floor of a grocery store during the day and handling event logistics at night, coordinating small private dinners and birthday gatherings on weekends, learning every corner of the industry on a schedule that left me about 5 hours of sleep if I was disciplined about it. The grocery store was not a detour. It was the foundation. It paid the first deposit on my business license. It covered the cost of my first professional camera and lighting kit. Every shift I worked, every early morning I showed up with tired eyes and a name badge. I was building something. I just never announced it because I had learned early that my family received my ambitions the way they received most things about me, with mild embarrassment and a quick subject change. By 26, I had my first proper venue contract. By 28, Brennan and Company had handled over 200 events across 3 cities. When my sister began planning her wedding, I had quietly reached out to the venue coordinator and arranged a significant reduction in the family's booking cost as a private gift. I did not tell my parents. I did not attach a note. I simply handled it the way I had always handled things, without waiting for permission or acknowledgement or the particular brand of approval that had never once been offered to me freely. After the host released the microphone, I returned to my seat. My mother reached across the table and put her hand over mine. She didn't say anything at first. The woman in the navy dress was watching from across the room with an entirely different expression than the one she'd worn at the entrance. My father cleared his throat twice before any words came out, and when they did, they were insufficient. Something about not realizing, something about being proud, the kind of sentences that start too late and know it. I listened. I nodded. I did not perform forgiveness I hadn't yet located inside myself, but I did not close the door either. I simply sat there, in a dress I had bought carefully, at a wedding I had quietly helped make possible, and I let the moment be exactly what it was: proof that the life you build in silence eventually speaks at full volume. No one introduces me as the grocery store girl anymore. They don't get the chance. If this story moved something in you, if you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to believe in you first, then you are exactly who this channel was built for. Subscribe right now. Every week we bring you real stories about real people who were written off and refused to stay written off. Hit that subscribe button and never miss one.